Joining me now, trial consultant Julie Blackman, who has worked on high-profile cases, Martha Stewart, Robert Menendez. Also with me, former Assistant DA, Manhattan District Attorney, MSNBC legal analyst Catherine Christian. It's great to have both of you. Julie, we feel like you're giving us a great opportunity to pull back the curtain a little bit on how jury consultants work. Let me start with the basics, because most of what we all know comes from movies and television, but this is obviously the real world. So are you in real-time touch, minute to minute, with the lawyers as they're having to make these decisions about who to keep or maybe who to challenge?
Well, if I'm actually involved in the jury selection, I sit at counsel table with the attorneys and chat with them as the potential jurors respond to the questions that they're asked. I try to offer advice. I take notes. I've often been involved in the design of the questions that'll be asked of potential jurors. And there's typically a profile of preferred responses that attorneys on both sides are listening for.
I just want to say we just saw the former president with his lead lawyer, and he seemed to be indicating, members of the press, at least he pointed in the directions of where the cameras would be. Maybe he was asking whether or not he could go over and talk to them, but he did say, I'll speak to you later, when we saw him put his hand up to his mouth. So there's that. Tell me a little bit more, if you will, Catherine, how much work, I mean, we're talking about a huge jury pool here, right? How much work have you done before? How much do you know even before this first question on this pretty extensive jury questionnaire gets asked?
Well, you mean about the jurors?
Yeah.
You know nothing until they sit in the box and start answering the questions. And then you're furiously writing down. Of course, you're going to have someone else on the trial team, and seems like there are 4 other people on the trial team, but 3 people in court. You're writing down each answer, and you're also looking. You know, for me, and everyone has a different style. I think jury selection is about social skills. I don't view it as a science. And prosecutors are looking for a different juror than the defense. You roll your eyes at me? No. If you're not paying attention? No. If I'm a prosecutor, I want people who read the news. If I'm a defense attorney, I want someone doesn't get breaking news alerts on their phone, goes to work every day, comes home, takes care of the family. So very different. But it is about, it's a feeling you get when you're picking a jury as a lawyer. Are they listening to me? Did they roll their eyes at me? Do they look like, you know, they're confused? So I always said it's a feeling I get. It's like, I just get a sense that they're just not paying attention, or they don't like me. It's really sometimes as simple as that.
Julie, how much of what you do is a feeling and how much is a science?
Well, I mean, intuitions, the kinds of things that we just heard about are important. But often before a trial actually begins in the courtroom, there's pretrial research done. And so you have an opportunity to discover kind of the demographic characteristics, let's say, of the people who are going to favor your side. And of course, the thing that keeps jury selection fair is the fact that both sides are trying to find jurors that they think will resonate to their trial themes. But pretrial research can give you a sense for the issues that are confusing to people, the kinds of things that they're going to need more elaboration on in order to understand, the way best to teach them. Because at the end, the jurors are going to have to understand this case, understand the evidence, finding people who are receptive. And pretrial research can help to identify the kinds of people who are most receptive. That goes beyond body language, although body language is a part of it, and looks at attitudes and experiences. And the questionnaire that's being used with the Trump jurors leads me to believe that there was some pretrial research done that helped the people involved to identify the kinds of questions they wanted to have answers to, because they knew what sorts of answers would be best for them, would be most likely to help them identify good jurors on both sides.
So, Julie, you know going in, right? So take this case. You know going in, probably 9 out of 10 Manhattanites voted for a Democrat. We know it's heavily Democratic. So immediately, beyond them saying, I think I can be fair and impartial, what are the kinds of things that you, with your experience, would look for, particularly with someone as famous as this, because you have dealt with famous people before? Can you put aside preconceived notions of someone you know this well?
That's right. I mean, that really is the fundamental question. Can you do it? And what are the signs that someone can do that? A certain vouching for open-mindedness, People say, well, maybe you say it, but is it true? You can look for like the nature of their work experiences. Are they doing work that requires them to be kind of creative, divergent thinkers? People have to make decisions for themselves, not people who are being instructed. People who have a broader view of their workspace. I mean, I know that there's a dispute ongoing about, and maybe it's been resolved, about whether or not jurors will identify their workplaces. The workplace is less important, their employer less important than the nature of the work that they do. I mean, I often say if I could know only one thing about jurors, I would want to know what they do for their jobs. And it's because people get to choose them, and in them, to a greater extent than other characteristics, and in them, they can reveal their style of thought, the kinds of things that may enable them to handle complex material, to keep an open mind. This is not an election. Being Democrats or Republicans is something certainly to consider, but these people are not voting in that sense, right? They're voting on the evidence that will be presented in this case, and the trial itself will take on an important, like an evocative life. People will come every day, 4 or 5 days a week, for months. It will be front and center of mind for them. And so the people who are best able to do that, to sort of engage the moment, to set aside the time, to be smart about it, to think about the issues in play, will be good jurors.
So both sides, Julie, have just 4 of their 10 preemptory challenges left. I'm going to go back to TVs and movies, which is what most people's experience is. And at some point you have a tough call and the lawyer says, Julie, and then you say yes, no. Does it actually work like that?
It does work sort of like that. I mean, it's a collaborative process always between a consultant and trial counsel.
But you have maybe just seconds, or am I exaggerating, to make this decision potentially?
Sometimes I would say minutes rather than seconds,
okay.
But sometimes only 1 minute, particularly depending on where you are in the process. And there's an interesting dilemma here, because one of the strikes was used against someone who's now, or strikes were being used at the time that they seated a juror who has now been excused. So whether or not that should entitle them to another strike, I think, is an open question. But it does appear that at this point they have 4 strikes remaining. And need to seat 4 more jurors.
I think they reset when they go to the alternates. But Donald Trump seemed to have the idea that he was supposed to, and his team was supposed to have unlimited strikes, which they do not. This is not something that was particularly against him. It is the way it is.
The law in New York.
But how do you make that decision as the number of strikes you have dwindles? Because you never know what's coming up next. It may be someone who more obviously you want struck.
Exactly. And having 4 left, only 4 left, when you have 7 jurors you have to pick, that's not a lot. So then it's about is she worse than him? It's literally like that. You go through each person. Well, it's a process of elimination. So they always say deselect. It is. It's literally, we only have 1 left. Okay, this one is better than that one, so let's just go from the one that's like the better than the 2.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.